Good day all. So today's topic is fencing. Many of you are very familiar and more experienced than I am with fencing. But a guy I follow on YouTube, pretty popular guy in the grazing world, is Greg Judy. Rule number one, he would say, is have a strong perimeter fence. Like most things in life, I broke that rule when I got Stella. Well, I got the sheep first and I got Stella. And we just used a variation of temporary electro netting or poly wire fence, and it worked, but I got off. So I would encourage you to make sure you have a strong perimeter fence. So we actually have woven wire. This top line you see is hot, meaning that's energized. With the highway here and the sheep, I just felt very strongly about making sure that they stay in. So, you know, the things, or what you've seen in other videos where we're moving the sheep and you see kind of the white posts and the white lines behind, or this reel that's right there, and we'll look closer at that in a bit. You know, that's temporary fencing that allows us to do daily or shorter moves, 1 to 2 days with the cattle and the sheep, known as temporary fencing. And you're able to make that paddock smaller or bigger depending upon how dense you want to graze that paddock. So that temporary fencing is what allows us to do that. You can just start dividing between your perimeter fencing, as well as if you have permanent interior fence, which we don't have yet because I want to get our layout right, but hopefully this fall yet. So, you know, when you come back to electric fencing, it's psychological, right? It's psychological for the animal. You train them in a controlled area, meaning like a hard fence like this, or I had, if you remember some of my earlier videos, I had cattle panels up. And then it becomes psychological. It's not just psychological for the animals, it's psychological for the farmer, because when they're inside this, despite the, I'll call it the graveyard getaway of the cows, you know, it's worked very well. You gotta make sure the gates are latched properly. But it's worked very well, and I sleep peaceably at night because I know that, generally speaking, there's really no way to get off the farm. So there's a psychological aspect for the farmer as well. So I'm in here now, outside of our perimeter fence for the past couple of days, and I'll show you some different views of it. But we have a 2-wire poly wire, and that's what has kept the cows in. And I just moved the sheep in there today. So I'm depending upon greatly on that psychological aspect of the temporary fencing, keeping them in. Now, what I'm using for reference is been several months now inside here, and short of 2 times, one by the cow, one by the cows, one by the sheep, getting out of their temporary fencing. Both of them were my fault because either I did not have enough forage in front of them, and the other one was just the cows could see under it. It's too high. We'll just leave it at that. They've stayed in it. So I should feel very, very confident that they'll stay in it. So there's about an acre worth of pasture here that is not perimeter fenced. That's a whole nother conversation, not why. 2 different pieces of land that we own. But they're in there now, and the cows have been in there for the past 3 days, and the sheep are in there now. You know, the sheep, when they did get out, they don't go far. They want to stay together, they stay close. The cows did come home. I was thinking about that saying last night, when the cows come home. Well, they came home after the graveyard shift. So we really like this style fencing. We're experimenting with polywire on geared reels by Gallagher, as well as the Smartfence. Specifically the Smartfence, we really like it. It's best used in long runs because it pulls out nicer like that. When you're going around corners, the posts tend to come, and I've got several stakes that are bent over because of that. And I've worked through that by bracing those posts as I pull it around with another step-in post. But let's take a closer look at the fencing. So this is the Gallagher Smartfence, I'm sorry, with the reel system. And you'll see 4 spools on here. After some time, and by the advising of another grazer, he said just take that bottom wire off because it grounds out too much and the sheep will still stay in. So this one has been disconnected. It needs to stay in here to keep the reel integrity, but we use the 3 top lines. And you loosen it here, and you can just begin pulling out after you put your first stake in and set in your other stakes. And then when you're ready to tighten it up, tighten the handle, and then you crank the handle. So again, we've got 3 wires here. And then what I have found, especially, we have a lot of contour here. It's not maybe severe contour, but it's enough that we use these step-in posts, which work really nice. Holding them up as we kind of go over some of this topography. And then on the outside, like I said, we've had the cows in here. We've got 2 wire. The cows would actually stay in with a 1 wire, but I knew that we'd be moving the sheep over here. So we've built the lane. Looks more narrow than what it is, but the cows will come in here and they're gonna have the new area up here. So on this Smartfence, they also provide a stake. It's just like a tent stake. You pull it off of here, pin it, and then you can tighten it as you would a tent stake. I really am thankful I removed that bottom wire because I was after doing a lot of weed eating string trimming to make sure that it didn't ground out as much. So this will be the new area the cows will be in tonight. It's really lush up there in the shade because of the dry time we had. Hopefully they don't screw with these. These are we're working with an organization that is doing soil study, and we've got one system here and another one in our other field, and that'll be a separate video at some point when I catch up. So what we're gonna do is to energize this. I got a little bit of I gotta untangle that. You can do a couple ways to energize this. You can just run a jumper. Another thing that you can do if you're short on jumpers, you can just run this. Yesterday I just ran this across this top line and staked it down over there. So then as the 2 poly wires lay over each other, they then have conductivity. And for the poly wire, we're using, I believe it's a 9 braid, which there's 6 copper lines in there, and then 3 stainless steel lines that are braided into this poly. And well, I guess it wouldn't be this one. The 9 braid would be on the geared reels, would be here. So overall, I really like it. But back to the psychological aspect of it, like there's no fence beyond this, right? So generally speaking, I think people have the experience. You keep the forage in front of them. You have a good energizer. For the most part, they're going to stay in. A consideration I had out here was deer, right? It's something I don't have a lot of experience with. But if deer come to it, are they going to plow through it or are they going to jump over it? And I think we've put a situation with the poly wire, the 2-strand, that both an adult deer could clear it as well as a fawn. So yeah, that's a look at what we're using for fencing. I'm no expert, but it seems to be working well. So as I go to wrap this up, I think about, what other considerations? I mean, there's so many more considerations that I didn't touch on here. Let's be honest. But predators, right? So I don't have a high fear of predators. When it comes to chickens, it's different than sheep. And when it comes to sheep, it's different than cows. But generally speaking, I feel fairly confident that our predator pressure is not nor will be too high. But, it's relative to your farm. There's no perfect answer for every farmer out there. It's unique to everybody's own situation and their own farm and their layout and their location. And for here, we feel pretty confident with what I showed you today that it's working well and will continue. So we got the sheep grazing behind the cows. You can tell the cows knocked all the dew off of here. And then in the far back there, you can see where the dew is still on, and that's where the cows will be coming through the lane along the sheep and grazing today. So hopefully you learned a little bit from the fencing, but let's be honest, I'm no expert, and I hope you have a great day.